Imagine a world where AI understands not just words, but context, where language isn't a barrier, but a bridge. That's the world that large language models are enabling, and I'm excited to share some of the latest groundbreaking updates from this week. First up, OpenAI is slashing costs for their GPT models. For example, their 3.5 turbo model will be 25% cheaper, making an advanced AI accessible to an even wider audience of developers. Now onto the really cool stuff. OpenAI is supercharged their language models GPT-4 and 3.5 turbo. Their context window, the AI's short-term memory, has now upgraded, jumping from 4,000 tokens to a whopping 16,000 tokens. That means ChatGPT can now process approximately 20 pages of text in one go, whether it's summarizing a research paper or capturing an hour-long YouTube videos content. More context, more data, more understanding. Developers are now also able to have more fine-grained control over the model via the system message feature. And the upgrades don't stop there. Say hello to the coolest and most impactful feature of them all, function calling. This feature is super cool. It lets you define a task via a function and enables ChatGPT to determine whether or not to call the function based on the user's input. If the model determines the function should run, it returns a structured output that you can use to call the function. It can also convert natural language into API calls or database queries. This lets ChatGPT interact with external tools in a more detailed and controlled way. For those familiar with LangChain, this essentially brings the functionality of LangChain inside ChatGPT. Also, since the model returns a JSON object, you're not limited to using just Python, which LangChain uses. You can use Python, but you can also use another language framework like JavaScript or Node. Time for a demo. Okay, I have an example of function calling using a Colab notebook. What we're first going to want to do is install the OpenAI package. I've already done this, so I'm not going to run it again. Next, we're going to import the package along with the JSON module. And then we're going to set our OpenAI API key. I've already done this, but you would place your key here. If you don't already have one, just go to platform.openai.com and create an API key. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're going to define our API, and this is the function that we're going to want ChatGPT to recognize. This is just an example. We're just hard coding some dummy data, but in your application, what you would do is this would be your backend API, and it would have this. It would return back a JSON response, but right now we're just hard coding this data, so it returns this data for us. As you can see, it's a mock saying we're calling a mock weather API, and it's returning this JSON string of location, temperature, unit, and forecast. Okay, so next what we're going to do is instantiate our function calling pipeline. What is required here is a messages array that contains an object with the role and content, and here this is the user and what the message that the user is going to input into ChatGPT. So this is going to be the user input essentially. And then our functions array is going to be an array of objects, which are functions. It could be multiple functions, but right now we're just using one. And the function that we're using, it's get current weather as described above. We provide a description and importantly the parameters object, which tells us the properties, tells ChatGPT, the properties. It has a location, which is of type string, and a unit, which is also a string, but it can be either Celsius or Fahrenheit. And what's required, we're telling ChatGPT that the requirement for running this function is the location parameter. Okay, so next we're going to run ChatGPT with the information that we've defined above. So what we do is we create a chat completion object with the model defined. This is 3.5 turbo, the latest model, and then we're passing in our messages, which is the user input, and then the functions that we defined above. And then once that is created, we get back a response, and this is the response object. It's a JSON object, and it has a choices array, and this is where we get the crucial information from ChatGPT. If there's a message in this choices array, it means that ChatGPT correctly identified that a function needed to be called. It's identifying get current weather function, and the crucial information is right here. Okay, this is what, it doesn't look that exciting, but it is really exciting. What it is, it's ChatGPT has gone from the user input and extracted the important information into a JSON array called arguments. And this is the information that we as developers would use to call the function. So it provides us with a location of Boston. So we'll just store that in a response message variable. And then what we'll do here is we'll define our available functions, and we'll inspect the response message for that function call for the name, and then we'll see if the function to call is what we've defined before. And if so, we're going to load load a JSON object with that. So basically, this is just to get a bunch of fancy stuff to get to this portion here. Okay, so this location Boston is what you see right here in the ChatGPT response object from before. And this is crucial because these are the arguments that we're going to use to call a function. So basically, ChatGPT identified that we want to call a function, and it's provided us the exact arguments to use to call the function based on the user input. So what we'll do is we'll extract those function arguments and we'll run the function to call. And function to call is basically the function that we have defined, the get current weather. And what you get back is exactly the same thing as what we see up here. Again, we've hard-coded it to be the same, but this is the response that you would get back if you run this chat completion and extract the arguments using ChatGPT and then call a function based on that. Next, what we can do is pretty cool, is we can append that response message back into ChatGPT and allow ChatGPT to kind of summarize the results from that function call. And that's what we're doing here in this cell. And if we print the response, you can see that here we have a message object returned from ChatGPT, and in the content variable we have the summary. The weather in Boston is currently 72 and sunny with windy conditions. Pretty cool. Overall, these are major leaps forward in how we interact with large language models, and I can't wait to see what's coming next. Stay tuned for more news and updates.